Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. This is the latest Take 5. We're sponsored by Prize Picks, and we have good news. Prize Picks is back in the state of Florida. They've got a new game called Arena. You can check it out if you subscribe with the code 5. You can still get your initial deposit matched up to $100, but Prize Picks is back in Florida, so check it out at prizepicks.com, code FIVE. All right, as much as we like that, we don't like some of the stuff that's been going on in the media the past few days. It should not be a surprise. We know that the Northeast media dominates NBA coverage. The Northeast media does not like the Miami Heat. A lot of them work at SiriusXM NBA or ESPN, so it's not just the Boston papers and radio stations, although they're culpable as well. Over the past few days, we have seen on ESPN, which is a joke of a network when it comes to covering this league. They basically spent the entire season covering two teams, or maybe three if you include Boston, but the other two are the Lakers, who are probably going to get swept, and Golden State, a team that is already in Cancun. So they do not know how to cover the NBA properly. I think everyone is aware of that. They have good individual people there, many of whom I'm friends with, but the overall context is awful. Anyway, the other day, you had Kendrick Perkins and Michael Wilbon commenting about Miami Heat fans and calling it an embarrassment that they weren't there for a 7 o'clock game on Friday night. You know, if you live in this area, and I live in Fort Lauderdale, but I've lived all over South Florida, you cannot get to a game at 7 o'clock in Miami, okay, from anywhere, unless you leave at 4. That's just the way that it is, okay? I leave my place sometimes at 5:30. I get there at 8. Again, I live in Fort Lauderdale, 23 miles away. This arena is built on a bay. It has no access in 3 of its 4 directions. It's beautiful, but it's not convenient. And Heat fans know this. People who live down here know this. 7 o'clock on a Friday night, which is what it was for the play-in, is impossible, okay? Now, I get it easier because, again, this is my job, so I will leave at 3:30 or 4 and make sure I'm there on time. But most people do not have that luxury. They have to work till 5 or 5:30 or 6 in an office. Maybe they need to stop it at home. You cannot make it there by 7 o'clock, get parked, and get through security, because I will say this, the Heat have one of the worst, longest security lines in the entire NBA. I've been to every arena, okay? That's first thing. Then you had Kendrick Perkins, who I don't know what the hell he's doing. He basically went out, and again, of course, he played for the Celtics, although playing is kind of stretching it. He went out there on television and essentially said that if the Heat made all of their three-point shots and all of their other shots, they would still lose to the Celtics or still get swept. Now, perhaps this was hyperbole, but this is just idiotic, all right? If they made all their shots, they'd win the game, all right? This, again, is a network that does not know how to cover this team down here, perhaps because they don't get the leaks from them that they get from other teams. We saw this during the summer where they were very against a Dame trade to Miami. Remember all of that? Woj basically doing the bidding of Joe Cronin. Again, he doesn't get leaks from the Heat organization like he gets it from other places. And again, half of the media is from New York or Boston that works at ESPN. The other half is from Los Angeles, okay? There's nobody from Miami who's prominent on their shows anymore. There are 2 good friends of mine who still work for ESPN, but you don't see them on those programs. So that's where we're at. Okay, and then we get the most ridiculous one, which was Brian Scalabrine, who was a bit player for the Celtics, as you know. And he was on SiriusXM NBA radio with Frank Isola, who I know who works out of New York. And Brian has now decided that Erik Spoelstra, a decorated coach, who was just named the coach that most NBA players would want to play for. This was in an anonymous poll that came out today. This coach, who happens to be a lead assistant on the Olympic team, so he deals with star players all the time, including Jason Tatum, who's on that team, okay, and Drew Holiday, who is on that team, that Erik Spoelstra called a timeout with 1.5 minutes left to order a code red, like A Few Good Men, to tell Caleb Martin to go take out Jason Tatum. There is no record over the past, and how many years is it now? We're at year 15, 16 for Erik Spoelstra, of him ever doing that sort of thing. He shows tremendous respect for other players. If you had enough time, I would tell you stories of the things he's done for me and friends of mine over the years that he did not have to do. This is a good, compassionate person. He's not sending anybody out there to take out anybody's legs Beyond the fact, it doesn't even make any sense. He decided to call a challenge. You can argue whether or not he should have done it at that point. We know Spo always holds his challenges. You have to get a timeout at that stage for the challenge. That's why the timeout was called. Oh, and by the way, the biggest part of this, which I shouldn't leave out, if you actually watch the entire video, Drew Holiday shoved Caleb Martin. Okay, that's not a crime. That happens. But he shoved him into the player. He shoved him into Jason Tatum. So this entire thing is ridiculous. This is Perkins, this is Scalabrine, this is Wilbon. These are a bunch of people who don't like this organization for a whole bunch of different reasons, who are jealous of this particular area, and they are doing it again, and it's going to continue. Look, it's bad enough that the Heat don't have their full complement of players. I'm not going to excuse them for everything that's happened this year. If they didn't have to play in a play-in game, then Jimmy Butler wouldn't have been hurt. So maybe they should have taken the regular season more seriously. But the reality is the Heat are not trying to wreck anybody to get to the next round at this point, okay? They are seriously undermanned. They're playing as hard as they can. That's it. That's it. Even if they took out Jason Tatum, they still wouldn't be favored in this series. Not without Butler and Rozier and with Duncan Robinson playing at basically half speed. It's enough, okay? Scalabrine owes Spoelstra an apology. Simple.